It was supposed to be just another ordinary morning at the Sterling corporate tower, where dreams were measured by corner offices and parking spots. But no one there would ever forget what happened that day, when a CEO laughed at a janitor's son, only to discover the truth that would silence an entire boardroom. Smash the subscribe button. Sit back as we delve into this story. It all started in the lobby of Sterling Tower, shimmered with marble floors and artificial smiles. Employees rushed past the janitorial staff like they were invisible, except one man, Frank Miller. Middle-aged, quiet, and always carrying that same old mop. His back was bent, his uniform faded, but his eyes still carried a strange calm, the kind that comes from years of swallowing pride. Frank had worked there for almost 15 years, never late, never complained. Most of the executives barely knew his name, but the security guards loved him. The cafeteria ladies saved him extra meals. He was one of those people who made everything work quietly in the background, without ever being noticed. That morning, Eli came to the building for a job interview. He was bright valedictorian of his class, graduate in software engineering, polite and sharp as a blade. Frank had told him, "Son, no matter how high you go, stay humble. People remember kindness more than they remember titles." Eli smiled. "I learned from the best, Dad." What neither of them knew was that inside that same building, Richard Hale, the company's powerful and notoriously arrogant CEO, was preparing to meet Eli for an interview that would change everything. Now, Richard was the kind of man who treated respect like a currency, something only the wealthy could afford. He was brilliant, yes, but also feared. He'd built his empire by stepping over people, and he was proud of it. "If you're not laughing, you're losing," he often said to his executives. At 9 a.m., Eli walked into the lobby. He wore a simple suit, nothing fancy, just clean and pressed. Frank was polishing the glass doors when he saw him. "Good luck, son," Frank said softly, hiding his pride behind humility. "Don't tell them I work here. Just be yourself." Eli smiled. "You got it, Dad." As Eli took the elevator up, a group of executives entered. Among them was Richard Hale himself. He caught sight of Frank mopping near the entrance and smirked. "You missed a spot, old man," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The group laughed. Frank nodded respectfully, forcing a smile. "Yes, sir." Richard walked away, tossing his coffee cup in the trash, except it missed and splashed across the floor. Frank bent down, cleaning the mess without a word. The CEO didn't look back once. Upstairs, in the glass-walled conference room, the interview had already begun. Eli stood before a panel of executives. Richard Hale entered, clapping his hands once. "All right, let's make this quick. We're looking for someone who thinks fast, acts faster, and doesn't make excuses." Eli nodded confidently. "I understand, sir." "Good," Richard said, sitting across from him. "So, Mr. Cole, what makes you think you belong in my company?" Eli smiled politely. "I believe innovation isn't just about technology. It's about people, how we treat them, how we listen. A company's strength comes from empathy." Richard chuckled. "Empathy? That's a luxury, son. This is business, not therapy." The executives laughed again. Eli didn't flinch. "With respect, sir, empathy builds loyalty, and loyalty builds legacy." For a moment, Richard's grin faltered. Then he leaned back, amused. "Legacy, huh? All right then, let's see what kind of legacy you come from." He flipped through Eli's resume, then squinted. "Your address, that's near the South End, isn't it?" "Yes, sir." Richard smirked. "I know that area. Isn't that where our janitorial contractors live?" The room chuckled again. Eli stayed calm. "A lot of hard-working people live there, sir." Richard laughed. "Tell me something. What does your father do?" For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Eli hesitated, then said quietly, "He's a janitor." The CEO's laughter exploded. "A janitor's son applying for a software position at Sterling Technologies? That's rich." The room joined in. Someone whispered, "This kid's in the wrong building." Eli's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He waited. Richard leaned forward, still laughing. Tell me, son, did your father teach you to code between mopping floors? Eli looked him dead in the eye. No, sir. He taught me how to stand back up after being looked down on. The laughter stopped. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Richard smirked, trying to brush it off. All right, Mr. Motivational Speaker, show me what you've got. Impress me. Eli plugged in his laptop and began to type. Within minutes, lines of code streamed across the screen. He spoke clearly, explaining every step how he'd built an AI system that optimized building maintenance by predicting when repairs were needed, saving companies thousands in wasted labor. Halfway through, one of the senior engineers leaned closer. Wait, that's actually genius, he whispered. Eli finished his demo and pressed enter. The software displayed real-time data from Sterling Tower's own infrastructure, lighting, temperature, even janitorial scheduling. Everything updated flawlessly. Richard blinked. How did you get access to that system? Eli smiled faintly. I built it using public data and the company's open source API. Anyone could have done it if they cared enough to look. The room erupted in quiet awe. Even Richard didn't speak for a moment. Then he cleared his throat. Not bad. Still, we're not running a charity. You'll need more than heartwarming speeches to survive here. Eli closed his laptop. Maybe, but it's people without heart that make places like this feel empty. He stood up. Thank you for your time, sir. He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, Richard called out, Wait! He leaned forward. You said your father's a janitor, right? Eli turned slowly. Yes, sir. Richard smirked. What's his name? Frank Miller. The CEO froze. His expression changed instantly. The room sensed it. Frank Miller? He repeated, almost whispering. Yes. Richard sat back, eyes distant, memories flooding his face. He swallowed hard. Your father used to work for me at my first company 20 years ago. He was our building manager. Eli frowned, confused. That's him. Richard's voice grew quieter. I fired him over a mistake that wasn't his fault. He took the blame to protect another worker. I didn't even thank him. A week later, there was a fire in that building. He stayed behind and helped people get out, saved lives. The room went silent. Richard's hands trembled slightly. I heard he never came back to that company after that. I thought he'd disappeared. Eli stared at him, stunned. He's been working nights here for 15 years. You pass him every morning. Richard's jaw tightened. The color drained from his face. Suddenly, everything he'd mocked, the humility, the address, the job hit him like a freight train. Without a word, Richard stood up and walked straight out of the boardroom. He took the elevator down, executives trailing behind, whispering. The doors opened to the lobby. There, Frank was still mopping the same stretch of floor. When Richard stepped out, the janitor looked up. Their eyes met. It had been 20 years, but recognition came instantly. Frank, Richard said softly. Frank blinked. Mr. Hale. The CEO swallowed. You're still here. Frank smiled faintly. Someone's got to keep this place clean. The entire lobby fell silent. Employees stopped mid-stride. Even the receptionist froze. The mighty CEO stood before the janitor like a guilty schoolboy. Richard stepped closer. I owe you an apology. For a long time, I've forgotten what real integrity looks like. Frank shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Life has a way of teaching us all. Richard looked over at Eli, who had just stepped off another elevator, confused by the scene. Frank, Richard said, his voice breaking, your son. He just gave the best interview I've ever seen. You should be proud. Frank smiled, eyes glistening. I always have been. Richard turned to Eli. Mr. Miller, I'd like to offer you the position. But more than that, your father deserves something too. He pulled out his company card. From this day, he's not a janitor. He's head of facility innovation. The software you built, we'll use it company-wide, together. The lobby erupted in stunned applause. Eli stood speechless, his eyes flicking between his father and the man who had once broken him. Frank simply placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Told you, son. Always be kind. You never know who's watching or what story life's still writing." Later that week, as the company newsletter went out, one quote stood at the top. "Greatness isn't born from privilege. It's built by those who never stop working, even when no one's watching." And that's how a janitor's son reminded a powerful CEO what real success looks like. Because sometimes, the people we overlook are the very ones holding the foundation beneath us. And the man everyone laughed at, he walked out of that building not just as a janitor, but as the quiet legend who taught an empire humility.